Hello and welcome to another interesting episode of Think About It with Osita Ifeanyi. Today I have an interesting guest, Daniel Schaer, who is currently from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Estonia, and they have been doing quite a lot in Africa, connecting Africa and Estonia. Welcome to Think About It with Osita Ifeanyi.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you. Please tell us about yourself, because I see from your portfolio that you have been with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Estonia. You have been an ambassador to South Africa, or you're still an ambassador to South Africa, and also to the head of political station and the European Union delegation to Rwanda. And you are doing a lot bringing Africa and Estonia together. I see that's your goal. Please tell us about yourself and these experiences.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been working in the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs for over 20 years. As you mentioned, I've also been quite active in Africa. And this year will be 20 years from my first visit to the continent. And that was to Burundi to observe the elections in 2005. I have visited up over 35 countries. I think it's now 37 countries on the continent. I lived for 4 years in Rwanda, as you mentioned, working in the EU Delegation, and I'm Estonia's ambassador to South Africa and to Kenya.
Okay. So you have been working quite a lot in the African ecosystem, and right now you're in Estonia. Tell us, what are some of the challenges that you have faced working in the African ecosystem, or some of the goals that you've set from the beginning and how you've been able to accomplish it?
So, I think the big goal has been how to create more awareness in Estonia about Africa, but also creating more awareness in Africa about Estonia. So I think those have been really the challenges. Not It's not even stereotypes because we don't really know each other. So it's been really telling our story, telling the Estonian story of when we restored our independence in 1991 after the fall of the Soviet Union, after almost 50 years of occupation. Then we didn't have any natural resources. We were a poor country, and so we had to quickly develop and also to provide services to our people in an efficient manner, because we didn't have that many people. We're only 1.3 million people as well. So we really went the digitalization direction. So now we're up to 100% of government services are online. And that's sort of the story that opens the doors for us on the continent, as many African countries are looking at digitalization as we speak. They're looking to see how the internet and how digital services can help them improve their economies, how they can be more efficient in governance, but also looking at how AI is going to influence what's taking place in the business and in the government spheres. So that was the story that we were bringing to the continent. But the challenge also is how to make Africa more attractive to Estonians. And so we've been doing an Africa Business Forum now already 2 years. This year will be the third year in May, and that's really been bringing the African story also to Estonia. Estonians are very keen to travel, so the traveling option is another way of making Africa attractive to Estonian citizens. There's also the business side of things. So with the continent growing very quickly, a young population but very dynamic in terms of digitalization, there are lots of opportunities, and I think that's another thing that's very attractive to Estonians.
Yeah, I like I like that you mentioned the opportunity. There are many things that you mentioned that I was going to ask along the line. For example, the African Business Forum that you did, I think last year, and you're having another one coming up in May. What was the goal of that forum from the inception, and what did it accomplish? over the last year and now, if you measure like some of the main accomplishments and also the challenges that you face?
So the first goal was to introduce Africa to Estonian companies. With the European markets becoming quite saturated and mature, where the competition is very, very high, the Estonian companies are looking at new markets. And especially after COVID, the interest in finding new markets is there. So the first goal was to introduce what is happening on the continent in different technological sectors. We are focusing on digitalization, so everything to do with IT, green technologies, going from climate to energy to water, then educational technologies and health technologies, and the last sector that we've indicated of interest is startups, and those are the ones. So at the same time, we want to build partnerships. So the goal was also to bring African business people to Estonia, who are looking to build these partnerships. As I mentioned before, Estonia isn't so big of a country, so the chance of an Estonian company coming by itself to the continent on its own is quite limited. The ones that are there are the big companies that Bolt,
Yeah.
uh, Skype, Wise, Playtech, and of course they can do it on their own. But there's only so many of those. So the medium-sized companies are the ones that we're looking to partner with African businesses, and that's the goal of the business forum.
Yeah, that's nice because you mentioned, I know both is very active in the African ecosystem. They are really doing well. And one thing I appreciate about what you did is about the foresight, because I know how many years have they been in operation in, for example, Nigeria or where you served?
They've been in Cape Town. I mean, in South Africa, in Kenya as well. I think they were somewhere around 5, 7 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Is what they've been operating.
So the idea is the foresight, because it's only now that a lot of companies and a lot of governments are seeing the importance of seeing Africa as an opportunity or as a partner. Usually, it's when they go in, it's always to take, not bring in the opportunity. But you mentioned that you try to get African entrepreneurs to also come to Estonia so that they are introduced to that system. And that is something that is remarkable. How how can you measure the success from that? What have been some of the achievements, of having African entrepreneurs come to Estonia to see how business is done in Estonia?
Well, I think the measurement is normally export numbers and trade numbers, and the trade numbers have been growing. But again, the trade numbers are not something that will be it won't be reflected in next year's numbers. It'll be reflected, as you mentioned, 3, 4 years down the road. So I think what the indication of success is that African business people want to come to Estonia, want to come and visit, and I think good example of that is that there was a Kenyan company who organized together with Absa Bank a visit to Estonia 2 weeks ago, and there was 40 people in that delegation who came to Estonia, and it wasn't only in terms of looking for business partners, but it was also to understand about the Estonian economy, about the how we simplify doing business, how the government gives the businesses all the tools to be successful. It's how companies work together, and it's also learning about Estonia. So it was a little bit of everything put into a visit, and the fact that these companies want to come and some companies are returning for multiple times. I think those are the indications that we're being successful.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice you mentioned this. And one thing that stick out to what you said now is the government resources and tools. So aside from the private sector being heavily involved, there is serious government, input in there, because I saw from the SD, which is probably the Estonian development or foreign development, that they are kind of really trying to harness these things that you mentioned, which are the opportunities forming partnership. How large do you think the government involvement with the private sector is? And how can we kind of play that model somewhere else? For example, in Finland, where we also are looking to see how we can get more African entrepreneurs, more African businesses to this side of the world. What do you think is some of the
Well, I think in Estonia, it's the public-private partnership. So we built up our entire IT ecosystem, e-governance ecosystem, together with the private sector. We built up our entire cybersecurity system in partnership with the private sector. So when we had a significant attack in 2007, it was together with the banks who needed to protect also their systems, who were fighting back to back with the government in protecting our cyber environment. So, I mean, I think that's the lesson to take away, that you don't always need to purchase from the big multinationals. You can also work together with your own companies to build up your ecosystem and to build up those sectors. And I think that's also something that Finland does, as well, as that they work closely. The government supports the companies to make their presence or their doing business easier, but also supports them in Africa. So we just have a current project in Botswana together with Finland and with France, where we're going to work on digital skills training together with the government of Botswana. So I think that the same way as Estonia is opening the doors to Africa for Finnish businesses, Estonia is doing the same, opening those, making those introductions, and the opposite way is also true, because of the ambassadors of the African countries, their tasks are becoming more and more business related, in how to find opportunities for the companies. And I think that's another good partnership where I work very closely with my fellow ambassadors, who, for example, my Kenyan colleague and my colleague from South Africa, that we work together to support our both of our goals.
yeah, that's really, you really mentioned things that are kind of the main, and this is something that is we as immigrants, especially we that have lived here a very long time, want to see more opportunities like this created, where this is, it means that ordinary immigrants who have lived a very long time in places like Estonia and the Nordics are also able to give their skills, their experience of both cultures. How do you think that would, or because I see quite a lot of African entrepreneurs, the African immigrant entrepreneurial ecosystem in Estonia is really flourishing. It's doing well. What's your secret sauce?
I think the secret sauce is making it simple and easy to do business. That the government doesn't intervene. We have the e-Residency program, which allows you to open your company in Estonia and a bank account and run your company from anywhere in the world. Because often at the end of the day, people don't want to leave their home. They would like to stay in their country, and if they can get a job, then that would be, that would be ideal. And so what we recently did is we had 20 young tech experts from Strathmore University in Kenya came to Estonia for a 4-month internship. And the goal of the internship was for them to experience the Estonian ecosystem, but also look for opportunities. So 3 of them were hired by an Estonian company, but they work in Nairobi at home. So, I mean, I think it's also making, what Estonia has done is made the borders are in some ways, yes, there's an EU border, but for doing business and for working purposes, it's been simplified. So you can actually work for an Estonian company, often from anywhere in the world, because you have a digital signature, you have all kinds of safe ways of protecting your identity, and you're able to work from distance. And I think that's also what makes Estonia interesting for people from other countries.
Oh, that's really nice. So you mean now the e-residence is also applicable to African entrepreneurs who are able to be in Africa and work either for an Estonian company or the other way around, right?
It's opening their own company actually, so you can sell your services. You can be uh, um, uh, uh, um, a single entrepreneur. So you're selling your services to a company. You open your company in Estonia. You can sell your services to any European company. You have your own bank account there and everything, and you can do that from anywhere in the world. So you have people, people. Well, the Estonians obviously can do it without e-residency. They do it with just the citizenship. But often you have Estonians running their company from Africa during the Estonian winter, because yes, it is a little bit cold in the winter,
Yeah.
and if you can go in December, you can go somewhere nice, for January and warm. Then that's also attractive. So basically, you can run an EU business from anywhere on the globe.
This is really nice because this is something that I have tried as much to promote the idea, and you really put it well because people don't want to leave their home. So if they are able to see opportunities that exist, and get tap into these opportunities while being at home, I think it's something that is really an example that we can, really follow. It's something that I see it coming quite a lot into action or more in need in coming years because, like you said, Africa is growing, the population is young, the demand for labor and skill would increase. So why not introduce more models like this where people stay there and are able to transfer their skills, and do this kind of skill exchange? And this is something that we kind of, try to promote a bit more. Now, I know you're not from Finland, and I know probably you might want to, but you want to give a few bit about what has been happening in Finland in regards, and this is really important to me because I try to use my platform to also talk about this, which is a lot of highly skilled talents are living Finland, even after being trained or having the skills. How have you, like you said, kept it simple to attract the talent? How do you think we can do better in terms of retaining that skill or keeping immigrants who have come here to get the education, get the skills, understand the culture? How can we get them to be more useful to the society?
Well, obviously, the big challenges in Finland and Estonia is the language. Our languages are two of the most difficult in the world to master. So unfortunately, there's always going to be the language barrier if the immigrants choose not to learn, or find it just difficult to learn. And it's very much connected to our culture, because singing, theater, books, all of this, especially in Estonia, are such a key component of the culture. And during the winter in our part of the world, that when it's dark, then you have to go and do something. So it's movies, it's reading books, it's going to the theater. So I mean, in terms of culture, without the languages, it's very difficult to become one. But both the countries, a lot of speak, or most of the people speak English. So I mean, I think that's a lucky opportunity. But I think that the same example of these internships, um, once you graduate from a program in Estonia or in Finland, it's good to get the experience in an internship, or really to get that hands-on experience, because I mean, it's even bigger challenge in Africa is that we get these pieces of paper after we graduate, but they don't guarantee you a job these days anymore. So often it is more important what the actual hands-on experience you've had. So if also during your studies you weren't working, or you weren't actually getting the hands-on experience, you have to do that afterwards. So I think
Mm,
it's really and I think it's really the question of integrating. And I think they're already pairing companies with people while they're doing their studies would be the solution for that. So definitely, where we see, so we last year we had a Zimbabwean young lady who was interning with us to help us with the business forum, and this year we have a gentleman from Nigeria who's interning with us, helping us organize the Africa Business Forum. And both of them are studying in parallel. And I think these types of things are really key. And I think that really changes also the mentality of the ministries. Is if you have some skill set, some experience that the ministries don't have, then you should feel free to go and offer that to them or to the companies, because being an African, you know the markets, you know the countries, you know the cultural rules, and I think that's where the opportunities are. And the universities, I think, are becoming more and more open to supporting these, and are also becoming, at least the Estonian universities are becoming more and more involved and partnering with universities on the continent. So I think it's really, again, building these relationships.
Yeah, you really made very good points. And one of the things that stick out to me from what you said is the idea that you pair these individuals with companies. And this is probably going a way further from telling, okay, you have to do this, you have to go do that. So it means you also make it quite easy for them to access. So integrating the companies, the private, yeah, and that's where the private public partnership really is really working in that way. And I've seen it kind of in terms of the ecosystem thriving and the success that you had from the African Business Forum the previous year. But what about the issue of funding? Because this is one of the biggest challenges that exist. Usually, we find that the access to funds, especially when people present ideas, is very difficult in certain places. And we know that based on the economic situation now, the funding also is going down. How easy have you made it for such startups or companies to access funding? Be it if you go into Africa to do business, or if it's someone doing business in Estonia, be it an immigrant.
Well, we believe in the free trade and the market system. The market will decide whether your idea is worthy of it or not. So, when I was in Kenya at the beginning of the year, the end of last year, I heard a new term called grantrepreneur, which means entrepreneurs that just live off of grants. And in some ways, going from one grant to another grant isn't the market deciding that your idea is good or not. And in some other cases, startups aren't always told directly as to, maybe your idea doesn't work.
Mhm.
Maybe you shouldn't be getting any funding. Maybe it's time to think about another way out. So I think it really needs to be frank, and if your idea is good, you will find funding for it. And I think, again, where I see this opportunity is to make those partnerships, make partnerships with founders, make partnerships with other people. So what really worked well in Estonia was something called the Skype Mafia, and it's those who were initially with Skype. Most of the main programmers who did the programming of Skype were Estonian. So when Skype was sold, they were able to benefit from that. They reinvested their money and into different startups. But since they're also founders, they've also have the experience. They were able to give the value of their advice, which is in many cases was even more valuable than actually the funding.
Mm.
So throughout that Skype Mafia, they were able to build various companies. So Bolt, the founders of Bolt actually worked for Skype at some point in time, and different founders. So I think I've also mentioned this a lot in Africa, that are those Africans who have made their fortunes, are they reinvesting into technology, on the continent? Are they reinvesting to support these ideas? Because I think that's, helping each other is where we have been successful, and where our, again, our ecosystem is strongest. So there is no, yes, the easy money is becoming less and less, but money is there. If you have a good idea, you have a good project, you're filling up, the startup sector told me it's called that, it's a vitamin versus a painkiller. So the painkiller is something that you need immediately. You need to take away the pain. So for painkillers, there's money everywhere. It's maybe the vitamins, the nice to have ideas, rather than the need to have. Those are the ones who will probably find it more difficult to get funding.
Yeah, yeah. It's really important that you mention these stories, both what they are doing in Africa and the example of Skype Mafia. I've heard actually about the Skype Mafias, and this is something that I really appreciate because this is when an investor or when an entrepreneur sees the need to give back, because it's a win-win thing. The opportunity that is being created is the goal. And this is something that I really appreciate you telling us about. And I would try to exploit it more in terms of knowing how that model can be, replicated in most places. And yes, I agree with you because I believe in this business model of, really bootstrapping as much as you can to gain the ground. And I read a research, I think in one of this Harvard Business Review, that, why African entrepreneurs kind of do better is because, there's no access to funding. So you got to bootstrap a lot of things. So it gets you grounded and you target on getting to market just straight ahead instead of, raising capital and, all getting this cycle of indefinite raising capital and takes away your attention from the business. So I really appreciate you bringing that point now. Going forward, I'm thinking about you as an immigrant. You studied in Canada, you studied in Australia that I saw. What are those experiences like? Can you share a bit of the experience as an immigrant living in those countries? What were the shocks? What were the skills that you got through that process, and what would you recommend for any immigrant living in another country?
Well, my grandparents escaped from Estonia before the Soviet occupation in 1944. So my grandparents were immigrants to Canada, and I'm actually born in Canada. So my parents were born in Switzerland and in England, and so you can say I'm a child of immigrants. But I think I think there are two things that I got from that. My parents decided that I have to have some sort of additional benefit from schooling rather than the normal education. So what they did is they put me into the French immersion program. So I had French education up until grade five. So by the time I got to grade six, when they were starting to again bring the intensive English back in, I was trilingual. I spoke English, French, and Estonian. Estonian was the home language, and my career currently, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have the languages. So the fact that I spoke French fluently was the reason I was chosen to go to Burundi for the election observation mission, because it's a French-speaking country. So I think that the first thing is to learn as many languages as possible. It's really key, and that goes back to the example of Estonia and Finland, and getting understanding the culture. It's really much a lot of based on the language. And I think the second thing is that the experiences that you get from living in various countries really makes it, at least in my opinion, easier to adjust, easier to change to different situations. I went to university in Vancouver, but I lived in Toronto, so that's about 3,000, 3,500 kilometers away. I also went after finishing high school. I finished a semester early, and I did half a year in Estonia at an internship. Then I did an exchange year of studying in Australia. and now I've been living around, the world. I've lived in many countries. So I mean, I think that gives you the experiences of different cultures. It gives you a better understanding of your own country, but also of different countries. So I think that really all of these language programs, exchange programs, any of these opportunities that are provided to you, it's a really good idea to use them. And again, I think it allows you to understand yourself, your own country better, but it also helps you to find your way if you're in a different country, if you're an immigrant in a different country. So I mean, it's really using as many opportunities as possible. And I mean, I know Estonia and Finland aren't easy. The people like to be initially among, by themselves, do their own thing. But after a while, if you keep on pushing, I mean, they will warm up to you. So you will find the right people.
We lost you there a bit, but yes, you got back. I think the internet was a bit unstable. So, but the idea you mentioned is really, really key. The idea that an immigrant needs to do a bit of work. You need to give yourself to the society. You need to learn the language. You need to be able to adapt and also be able to maintain your own identity. And I see that that worked out well for you. You are able to show that, hey, I'm part of the society. I want to learn the language, even though you were born, and you still are able to learn many languages, and that came into use, years down the line. Thank you so much for these tips. I really appreciate this. And usually this, I would love to come to see this in person. And this is what I would plan towards, coming to talk to a lot of these entrepreneurs. I want to hear their experiences, share their stories, and see ways, how we can learn from what you've done and the successes you've had. For a nation of about 1.2 million people, you are pushing great stride, because the likes of both, the likes of Skype, have become multinational companies, and they are really doing well. And I also like what you mentioned about not focusing on the very big companies, but even small private establishments can do actually a lot in building these ecosystems. Thank you for being here. Any final words, any final encouragement in terms
No,
of.
I mean, we would love to have you in Estonia for the Africa Business Forum. Come and join us. And yeah, as you mentioned, my job is to make the connections, and the more concrete your ask is, the more the more easier it is for somebody to help you. If you just come and ask and say, "Oh, okay, I think we can do something together," well, that doesn't really help me. If you say, I know you have this company X in Estonia, and it's exactly what I'm looking to partner with because they are doing ABC, that makes my job much easier, and it makes makes it much easier for you to make those connections. As you said, do the homework. The information in today's world is all over the internet. So make sure you do your work and be concrete. Know which way your direction, and make your asks very specific, and don't be afraid to ask.
Thank you for those tips. They are really good. And I'm sure a lot of, African entrepreneurs, African immigrants, immigrants in general, and even the larger society can get a lot from what you have mentioned. And I really see that they are key in pushing whatever business or entrepreneurs forward. So I look forward to being there at so I'm really packed with a lot of activities now. So, but we would continue this conversation, because doing this in person is always far better, and it builds a lot of this connection. And what we would try to do, and what I'm trying to do, is share a lot of this information to the community, to people who need to hear it, because that's the only way we can help connect and build that bridge. And that's one way we can also bring Estonia and Africa together. Thank you for being here, and let's follow up on the conversation in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.